It is time for SBR's closing line, Saturday, July 20th. Ian Cameron, Drew Martin alongside you. We're breaking down the MLB card. We got some CFL action as well, and a UFC card tonight we're going to be breaking down. So let us know what you're betting on in the chat box and why. But without further ado, happy Saturday, Ian. Welcome into the show.
Yeah, it's good to be with you, Drew, as always, on a Saturday. We're looking forward to another Saturday in the sports world, sports betting world. In terms of what we look at specifically, baseball, we got 2 CFL games to wrap up week 6. Even have a UFC card, television card tonight. So there's some things going on, and we'll break it all down.
We will. We got 2 CFL games. Interested to get Ian's opinion on, plus the MLB. Guys in the chat box, welcome in. We got Michael, good morning to you. Cobra Sports, not applicable. Douglas Robinson in the house. Blakely Ree, welcome in. Dom Ricci, always good to have you in. Nasty N8, Matt Mad, welcome in. Yes, CFL, absolutely, Blakely. And we'll break down MLB first. That's kind of the rotation here. MLB, then CFL, then a little UCF, and best bets at the end. Ian, is there a game you want to start off at, or you want me just to kind of rattle off towards the top and work our way towards the bottom?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a game you want to talk about that you have a betting opinion on, a solid one, you can talk about it. I'm going to throw out this team that I just blindly ride now every single day. It's ridiculous. It hasn't been easy for this team to win the last couple games of their series, but they found a way to pull it out, both of them in extra innings. The San Francisco Giants, I'm talking about. This team has just been absolutely on fire. They have been money in the bank for their backers. They have been piling up the profits. They've been cashing as favorites. They've been cashing as small underdogs. They've been cashing as big underdogs. It doesn't matter. This team's just finding ways to win right now, and it's uncanny. And you always get a team like this, Drew, at this time of year, second half of the season, that comes out of nowhere and gets red hot. And sometimes these streaks with these teams, they can last weeks on end. They really can. Look at what happened with the Oakland Athletics, a year or two ago when they went on that ridiculous run. You could have just been betting them day after day repeatedly and going up to the ticket window and getting your money. That's how good it was, and that's how good the streak is starting to look with this San Fran team. Now, obviously, this number's gone up here. It was minus 125, minus 130. It's up to minus 145 even in a lot of spots. So people starting to recognize what this Giants team is doing. Certainly some margins. He's been good. He's been bad at times. He's had a little bit of both, but I certainly trust him a lot more than Lockett from a starting pitching perspective. Lockett's a guy that was in the Padres organization for years, wasn't very good there, wasn't effective at the major league level. I've not been impressed with how he's pitched here for the Mets. He's likely going to be on a short leash. You're going to get plenty of Mets bullpen, and you have had these 2 teams with 2 straight extra innings games. So you've got a Mets bullpen that I don't trust to begin. They have been better lately. I'll give the Mets bullpen credit for that. They've been a little bit better recent games, but you're still going to see a lot of their middle relief, which I'm not a big fan of with this group. Probably because Lockett's not going to give you a lot of length, not going to give you a lot of innings in this game. So I think it sets up well for another San Francisco win today.
Yeah, I'm not stepping in front of San Francisco either. I mean, there's some guys in the chat box talking about it, and San Francisco is kind of a one-way team until further notice for me, Ian. It's just, these teams in baseball, we've seen it year in, year out. When a team gets hot, you just don't want to step in front of them. You want to wait for the streak to end and then maybe look to bet against them. Ian, the game I wanted to bring up to you was this 9:15, 9:16, 6:10 Eastern start game. Chicago White Sox, Tampa Bay Rays. We got Giolito on the hill versus Yarbo coming from the left side. They open high minus 140s. It's pushed up to as high as minus 160, talking about the Rays at home in Tropicana. And I had this game circled mainly because look to actually fade Giolito. He has not been as good lately as he started the season. And, the Rays, on the other hand, in the AL East, playing good ball overall. And sure enough, we're getting it up here over minus 150, man. The secret's out. I was late to the party on the fade of Giolito. Have you noticed the same thing here, looking to bet against this White Sox team?
Giolito's a guy I made a lot of money with earlier this season. When I started to catch on to him pitching quite well, I actually started to ride him for a little bit in terms of his starts. And he was pitching really well earlier this season. You're right. He hasn't pitched quite as well in recent outings for this White Sox team. It's been hit around. I think the home run balls are starting to really hurt Giolito in recent starts. He had done a great job minimizing that when he was pitching well earlier this season. Hasn't been quite that same kind of effectiveness lately for the White Sox. And let's not forget, this is a pretty bad run that the White Sox have been on. They finally actually won a game. They won the first game of this series last night against Tampa Bay. So maybe it's a chance for them to hit the reset button. That stopped a really bad losing streak, 7-game losing streak for the White Sox going into last night. They beat Tampa 9-2. I think from a spot perspective, not that you don't want to go too crazy with situational spot betting in baseball, but it probably sets up well for the Rays in a bounce back situation. You look at the White Sox, they are hitting better, Drew, against lefties, and obviously they'll see one here with Yarbrough. Giolito, 3 runs, 7 hits last start against Kansas City, so he was better. Prior to that, he got rocked by the Cubs. He got hit hard as well, twice by the Cubs and by Boston, so it's been a little bit of a rougher go for him. He has dominated the Rays. That's one thing to keep in mind. He faced them 2 years ago and last year, just 1 run allowed in each of those starts. Yarbrough's never faced the White Sox. It's a really weird game. Yarbrough does have a 6.89 ERA at home this year, so that's something that is also a little concerning for me. Really tricky because I don't trust Chicago to win this game again, but I don't want to lay minus 152 here with Tampa. Yarbrough has not been impressive enough in terms of his home numbers at the Trop this season, and the White Sox have hit lefties well, so maybe they're going to have some success. Maybe a White Sox team total over makes some sense to me. I think they could hit Yarbrough a little bit. And that way you don't have to worry about what Giolito does.
Yeah, Ian, that's a good stat here. And Coactus in the chat box saying the same thing, 6.89 ERA at home. He's also saying Giolito's 4-1 in last 5 starts during game 2 of his series. Not sure if that second stat has as much to do with the outcome of this game as the first stat does. So yeah, home road splits, it's big, so might look towards the over in this game as well. But yeah, also some other guys in the chat, VIP in the house. Also 2 plays per day only. I like that name of this guy. Vegas will collect off San Francisco bettors today. 2 plays per day only. Also Matt Mad in the house and Capper John as well. Brooke Jordan, welcome in, man. Ian, is there another game you wanted to bring up? I was interested in getting involved in the NL Central is a play I'm on, but is there another game you wanted to bring up on the MLB boards? Got you on mute, man.
There we go. We've got Zach Eflin and Musgrove with the Phillies and the Pirates. Phillies with the win last night. Phillies, these are big games for them. Eflin is a guy that's been very, very erratic. There's no question. He's a guy that actually I made a lot of money with last year in terms of him being a bet-on pitcher. You remember last year, Eflin actually went through a really good stretch for the Phillies where he was, giving them quality starts, pitching deeper into the games, giving his team a chance to win. Hasn't been quite that same season this year so far, for the most part anyway, for Zach Eflin. And in his last 3 starts, he's been absolutely hideous, with a 9.60 ERA, 7 runs allowed in each of his last 2 starts. A Pirate team total over makes a lot of sense to me in this game. Let's not forget, he's not a guy that's gotten deep into games. He's topped out at 6 innings in his last 5 starts. 3, 5, and 3 starts with 6 innings pitched. So you're going to see that Philly pen, and that Phillies pen that's a gas can waiting to happen at most nights. I think you could see something similar to that tonight. Musgrove is, just up and down. I mean, he can give you a great outing, and he's done that a couple of times. He had a shutout going against Houston. He had a shutout going against the Cubs. And then in his last start, he gets smacked around by the St. Louis Cardinals, of all teams, which had been a struggling offense for most of the last month or so, prior to the last week, where they're actually starting to come alive now in terms of their lineup. But in his last start, Musgrove gave up 5 runs on 4.2 innings. And I like the Phillies lineup. I really do. They're starting to hit the ball better now. So I don't know what Musgrove's going to do. I'd rather keep that side of this handicap of this game out of it. I don't want to predict what Musgrove's going to do. He could be good. He could get lit up. That's what you usually get from Musgrove here. I'm going to focus in on Pittsburgh solely against Eflin because I think they're going to be able to do some damage here against him and the Phillies pen. So I'd be interested in a team total over with the Pirates here.
Okay, team total over with the Pirates. Looking that side. A game I did want to bring up was St. Louis Cardinals, Cincinnati Reds in the NL Central. We got Nicholas versus Luis Castillo commanding about a minus 130 price tag. for the Reds at home. 9.5 the total. I'm kind of disagreeing with this bump up in the total from 9 to 9.5. And actually, Jimmy the Bag was the one that put me on Mikolas being a pretty solid pitcher here. I actually faded him, lost a unit on that against the Pirates earlier this week. And Castillo going for the Reds, he's a top-line pitcher. I think that this guy's career in MLB is going to be a solid one. He's already there as one of the better pitchers, in my opinion. Going against these two offenses, I really think that the pitchers kind of dominate this one. So I think 9.5 is just a little bit too high here. I would look towards Cincinnati, but just lost a unit again, fading St. Louis earlier this week. So probably going to stay away from laying the 30 cents there with the Reds. I do like the under 9.5 there. Washington, Atlanta. That was an exciting one last night. Both bullpens kind of not really doing their job, keeping that game going. And it finally ended there 4-3. Ian, we were just talking about that off camera. You were watching it live?
Yeah, I was. I actually saw the 9th inning, and I was stunned. Beyond stunned that Fernando situation inning eyeball game in a game you need. If you're the Nationals, you were 5.5 back of Atlanta in the race for first in the NL East going into that game last night. I was shocked. that the Washington Nationals had Fernando Rodney in the game in the 9th inning in a tie game in a high leverage situation. How are we still pitching Fernando Rodney in high leverage situations when you need outs in a game that you need to win? How is this still happening with these managers? I know how. It's Dave Martinez. That's how. This guy stinks as a manager. The Nationals win in spite of this guy. He has been horrible from day one with this organization. He can't manage the bullpen properly. He leaves you making decisions in terms of pinch hitting and when to take the starting pitcher out that leave you scratching your head. And so it's not a surprise to me that he's the guy that figures out, let's put Fernando Rodney there in the 9th inning. But sure enough, the Atlanta Braves end up getting the walk-off against him. Crushing loss for Washington because, you actually got Victor Robles giving you the lead in the top of the 9th with that home run, and then Rodney comes in and gives it right back in the bottom of the 9th, and now you're game further behind the first place Atlanta Braves. So that's a tough loss to have to bounce back from if you're the Nationals here in this game, and it's not going to be easy against Soroka. I like this guy a lot. I have from the beginning. It's got nothing to do with him being a Canadian from Calgary, Alberta. It's got to do with the fact he's just a damn good, young, solid pitcher, and I think he's going to keep getting better for this Braves team. So I would only look at Atlanta in that game.
And Ian, we got some guys commenting here on the Cardinals versus the Reds game. Brandon Lugo saying it's hot and humid, slight breeze out in Cincy. I wouldn't touch the under in those conditions. That's a good point. And the weather's actually something that I haven't bet it yet. I do like the under, but it kind of points me maybe a little bit more towards the Cincinnati side. Combine that with the fact that Tomar pointing out that Mikolas has been garbage on the road. He's been much better at home.
I was going to say that, Drew. Yes. Mikolas in terms of his current form, you have to give him credit. He's had 3 tremendous starts, but the 2 starts on the road during the last 5 starts, you look at actually his last 4 starts on the road. He's been untouchable at Busch Stadium. His last 4 starts at Busch Stadium, 2 runs allowed over a span of 27 innings. So he's allowed 2 runs in his last 27 innings pitched at Busch Stadium in St. Louis. But on the road, San Francisco, San Diego, Miami, Chicago Cubs, his last 4 road starts, Mikolas, he's given up 16 runs over 21 innings. So he has been a massive home-road dichotomy split kind of pitcher. Big time. Like, this is not a small home-road dichotomy or home-road split that we're seeing with Miles Mikolas. This is a huge one. Huge. 7.40 ERA for him on the road this season. 4-5 are the Cardinals in his 9 road starts this season. Castillo, on the other hand, has been awesome at Great American Ballpark. It is not easy to maintain a solid, consistent run pitching in Cincinnati, especially when you're with the Reds, but Castillo's done it. 1.69 ERA for Luis Castillo at home this season in 10 starts. That is phenomenal numbers for him in this ballpark. So I will not go against Castillo and the Reds in this ballpark. He's been too good pitching here at Great American Ballpark. But here's the problem, and why I won't back Cincy either. St. Louis is the better team right now. St. Louis is putting it together. They're finally going on a bit of a run. They're playing better ball, 6-1 in their last 7 games. So it's a conflicting game for me. I think the better starter, a guy that's been so good at home, I won't go against him. But you know how much I value the whole complete team picture, Drew, when it comes to baseball, because I think the line is solely based on the starting pitching matchup. I don't think the value's there with Cincy. I won't go against them. St. Louis is the better of these two teams right now. So I've got conflicting viewpoints, which means I'll end up passing on the game.
Yeah, Ian, this is an interesting case study, just handicapping both sides of this game. There's a lot pointing towards each way, and a shout out towards Tomar. Also, you, Ian, on pointing just a lot of different directions. Also, a couple other commenters in here with good points just on the home road splits, the wind as well. I believe that was Brandon Lugo in the chat. So hats off to you guys. Antoine Seymour, welcome in. Jonathan Succi. How about them Yankees, though? Ian, what are you thinking of the Yankees? Obviously what they've been able to do all season, one of the better stories in all of baseball, working their way through all of the injuries. But what about since the All-Star break? You still think that they're, a team you're wanting to bet on, considering their price point? You're having to pay, the Yankee tax, so to speak.
Yeah, that's not a team I'm looking to back right now. I mean, I respect how good they are. I respect the fact that they can obviously be in the World Series and win the American League. I think it's probably them and the Astros in terms of who's going to come out of the American League. No disrespect to the Twins or the Indians or Red Sox or any of the other teams that might slip in as wild card entries, but I think it's down to Houston or the Yankees probably in the American League. But here's the issue I've got with the Yankees, and we're seeing this happen with them a lot more lately. If they're not hitting home runs, where are the runs coming from? Where's the offense coming from? They're relying a lot right now on the home run ball. That's starting to worry me a little bit. At some point, this lineup's got to be, not that they're horrible. They can manufacture offense this way when they have to and when they want to, but they've got to do it more consistently. I've got to see some singles. I got to see some doubles. I got to see situations where there's a guy on second, nobody out. You hit a nice little ground ball to the right side, get him over to third with less than 2 outs. That's the kind of hitting I need to see more of from the Yankees, because their offense is lethal, no question. They've got power up and down their lineup, 1 through 9. But I got to see a little more situational hitting. Got to see a little bit more just, put the ball in play. Just, put the barrel of the bat on the ball. Get it in play, get just flip it, flip your hands. You don't have to always swing out of your shoes. Flip your hands, get a nice little single or double into the gap. Let's see some of that hitting, because I love the offense. Don't get me wrong, Drew, but lately the Yankees are falling into just a little bit of a pitfall where they're relying just too much on the home run ball. And in the playoffs, especially, you might pay the price for that kind of style and profile offensively. So just a little bit better in terms of manufacturing offense outside of the home run ball for the Yankees. That's what I would look, if I'm Aaron Boone, the manager, I'm looking at trying to improve that way in the second half.
Yeah, it's interesting to see them relying on the home run, but really a lot of teams are kind of going that route with if you're not hitting home runs, more teams than not are struggling in that sense of manufacturing runs in baseball. We got Doug Barnhouse in the house saying, this show is great. Love the insight. Well, thank you, Doug. Thank you for the shout out. And please, guys out there, smash the like button if you're liking the content here. Saturday mornings, 11 a.m. Eastern. Every Saturday up until and throughout football season, most likely. Ian Cameron at Babano on Twitter, myself at Drew Martin Betts. We appreciate all the comments here, guys. Russell Gordy, welcome in. Bookie Lover in the house as well. Padres, some guys looking for a game I wanted to bring up, Ian, and I know we got to get to CFL here shortly. The Marlins and the Dodgers. Just last night, a 2-1 game. They had Raul on the hill, and Zach Gallen and the Fish were up 1-0 going into the later innings, I believe. It was a low-scoring game out there on the West Coast. The Dodgers got pushed up above -300. And for tonight's action, This is very rare you see this, and it speaks towards kind of the discrepancy, at least the market says, and likely most people that have been watching baseball this year, in talent between the Dodgers lineup and the Marlins lineup. You very rarely see an all-star pitcher on the hill and a minus 300 the other way. We're seeing it tonight in late night action here with the Miami Marlins sending Sandy Alcantara on the hill, catching what, plus 270 against the Dodgers. Kershaw on the hill, minus 315, looks like the high watermark right now at Heritage. Total of 8. Do you have any interest in getting involved in these big line games are always tough, but I can't tell if it's the fan in me on the fish, but I mean, at plus a huge plus 200 price here with an all-star pitcher, you think it's worth a shot, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, I got to give him credit because it wasn't a great, beginning, I guess you could say, to his tenure as a starting pitcher with the Marlins, Sandy Alcantara. But there's no question about it in terms of his recent form. He's been better in recent outings. He had, I think, one start where he was hit around by Washington, a couple starts back. Other than that, though, relatively solid. Okay, the Mets start last time out for him, 4 runs in 6 innings, not great. But I think he's got a bright future. I don't know. Is he ready to face this Dodgers line? This Dodgers lineup, I mean, okay, they only scored 2 runs. I mean, you got to give Gallen credit yesterday. But prior to that, 6, 7, 8, 16, 7, 11. Like, this is a loaded offense right now. He struggled against the Mets. He struggled against Washington. He did shut down Pittsburgh, Philly in a couple of starts. But this is going to be a good test for the young kid. Kershaw's Kershaw. Kershaw's actually the Dodgers are only 1-3 in his last 4 starts, and he's been obviously priced very highly because he's Clayton Kershaw. Some of that because he hasn't pitched quite as well. Some of that because they just haven't given him the run support in a couple of these games. Marlins against lefties, not much of a difference, not much of a split in terms of righty production versus righty pitchers versus lefty pitchers for them. So you're not seeing much of a discrepancy there either way. This is a good test for Alcantara, though. Let's see how he can handle it here. He does have, he's had more good starts than bad, but he's had a couple good ones, or a couple bad ones, I should say, against lineups that aren't going to test him quite as much as the Dodgers will tonight. So, yeah, if you want to take a stab with it, Drew, go for it, but I'll probably stay out of this one.
I hear that, and a lot of guys saying Dodgers roll. I mean, and that's worked into the price. They're minus 300 favorites. They likely will roll, but at a huge plus 200 price with a good pitcher on the hill, sometimes I do look that way. Ian, is there any other MLB games you want to bring up? Of course, we can hit it again before best bets, but I do want to get to CFL sooner than later.
Yeah, definitely. When we're looking at one game that's very interesting, the return of Gio Gonzalez. For the Milwaukee Brewers here tonight. How's that going to work out for them? Gio Gonzalez returning from I believe in an injury stint that's lasted at least a couple of months, I think. He's been out for a long time for this Milwaukee group. Taking on Arizona tonight. Arizona won a wild one last night. That game, if you had the over last night, you didn't have to sweat it. He was absolutely terrific. That game was just not absolutely easy, cashing the over 10-7 in that game. And now Gio Gonzalez, his first start since, I believe right at the end of May or early June it was, and he was very solid prior to that. I think 3.19 ERA this season before the injury. But I don't trust pitchers in that first start back off at the injured list. I don't. I think they're more bad than good. They're more rusty than good. They're not sharp. And I think we might see that here from Gio Gonzalez tonight. He does have a good track record against Arizona. I get that. But I think this is a dubious ask for him to just step in there and pitch well. I think he's going to be on a little bit of not an innings limit or a pitch count, so to speak. But I think Craig Counsell, the manager, is going to keep an eye on how long they keep him out there tonight. First start in 2 months. And this Milwaukee, and I think that's bad for Milwaukee, Drew, in this game because their bullpen's not good right now. Like, it's a really bad bullpen. And I wouldn't have expected that coming into the season from the Brewers. Hell, even Josh Hader, almost blew a game the other day against, I believe it was Atlanta. The 9th inning, and Atlanta he gave up 2 runs in the 9th inning and almost a tying run as well. So even he has shown, some chinks in the armor, and he's really been the only reliever for most of the season they can usually count on and rely on. So I think Gonzalez, I don't trust him to pitch well, and I think you're going to see a lot of the bullpen because I don't think he's going to pitch a lot of innings tonight. So Arizona makes a lot of sense. Of course, you get Greinke at home. Greinke's been very, very good for the most part in his career pitching here at Chase Field in Zona. His home numbers have always been solid. And his overall season so far has been solid. 2.95 ERA, 3 ERA at home. The Diamondbacks are tremendous 7-2 in Greinke's 9 home starts this season. So price is reasonable here. You got Arizona about minus 135 to minus 140. I think that's reasonable chalk to lay here with the Diamondbacks. I don't trust Gonzalez to be sharp tonight.
Yeah, that's a good one. You bring up a lot of good points towards the D-backs, and they're still under minus 140 right now. Looks like the market's, putting pressure on the upside. So that one might be a better one to bet sooner than later. And yeah, a bunch of guys, including Brandon Lugo, saying Brew are a mess on the mound, both relievers and possibly starters here. Julius Shashin, he's kind of fade city for me. I have him circled as anytime he's going to look to bet the other way. But guys, we got CFL coming up. We might hit a little baseball later, plus UFC and best bets coming up. 11 a.m. Eastern Saturdays going forward on the SBR YouTube channel. We got Edmonton Eskimos, Montreal Alouettes, 53.5 -6 Eskimos on the road in north of the border. Football here. I don't know if you're laughing because I pronounce Alouettes or
Yes, you said Alouettes. You put a Q in it. That was pretty funny, actually. Yeah, it's Alouettes. Yeah.
What is an Alouette? Do you know?
It is. It's basically a resemblance. It's something to do with a ship of some kind. That's really where they got that name. It's kind of like with the Argonauts. An Argonaut is named after the boat, type of boat, and that's the thing. Montreal Alouettes is basically. Something similar in that regard. So, but very interesting here with this game. Edmonton, Montreal, first game on the docket. We've got Edmonton, laying 5.5, 6 here. Montreal's hot. Montreal's playing good football. Last 2 games, they win outright as underdogs against the Hamilton Tiger Cats and the Ottawa Red Blacks, and a very, very impressive couple of wins for them in those 2 games. They were 9-point dogs against Ottawa, 13.5-point underdogs against my Ticats 2 weeks ago, and they get the win in both of those games outright. So this is a good football team, not an easy one to bet against. But you look at the point spread adjustment now. You could, they were catching 9, 13.5. Now they're only catching 5.5 here against an Edmonton team that's playing damn good football. Their only loss this season is to the undefeated 5-0 Winnipeg Blue Bombers. That's their only loss. So Edmonton's played great. Trevor Harris has been awesome at quarterback. No interceptions, 8 touchdowns. Taking care of the ball, 73% completion rate. To be 5 games into the season and have that kind of a completion rate still, 73%. That's extremely impressive for the Edmonton Eskimos so far. Their defense has been better than I thought they would be. No question about that. Their defense has been solid this season so far with a lot of new faces and a new defensive coordinator. However, they go from playing a pedestrian, struggling BC offense last week, and they shut them down completely. They're facing a red-hot Montreal offense with a lot of confidence. Vernon Adams is confident at the quarterback spot. William Stanback, the running back's been excellent. They've got a nice quartet of receivers now that have developed and stepped up. B.J. Cunningham, Quan Bray out of Auburn. You'll know him. You'll remember him. Devere Posey, Eugene Lewis. This is suddenly a nice little receiving core Montreal has. I think both teams offensively have a good day today. You'll see points on both sides. I like both of these quarterbacks right now, both of these offenses. Edmonton's defense is good, but I think they'll be tested and they'll give up some more points today. And I still am suspect on Montreal's defense. I don't think they're great still. There's still some holes, and I think Edmonton's the kind of really good offense. They've been good for 28 points in every game, Edmonton, this season. I think they'll get to that here. I like this game over the total, 53.5. The current number there. And I would lay the points with Edmonton. I know Montreal's the hot commodity right now, but there's been an adjustment, and Edmonton's owned Montreal. They've won 10 straight meetings against Montreal, and 8 of those 10 victories for Edmonton head-to-head against Montreal have been by at least a touchdown. So if you can lay less than a touchdown, which you currently can, 5.5s are out there with the Edmonton Eskimos. That's the way I'd go from a side perspective. Edmonton and over the total for me in this one.
Nice. Yeah, I like what you said there on that over. Both offenses having success. And we got the late night action. A doubleheader tonight in CFL, BC Lions, Saskatchewan Roughriders, Ian. This one priced total about 50, seeing a 49.5, also seeing a 50.5 out there. So a full point in terms of sports books taking different opinions. And -5 pretty much across the board for the Rough Riders laying at home. You interested in getting involved in the latter half of this doubleheader?
Yeah, this is a very tough game to read because you got two struggling teams, especially BC. BC's been bad. They've given you no reason to back them going into this game. Their only win is against the hapless, winless Toronto Argonauts by 1 point. And it was a 1 point victory by the skin of their teeth against the worst team in the CFL. That's BC's only win this season. So it's dubious to trust them right now. I think their offensive line last week against Edmonton, that might have been the worst performance in a pro football game that I've ever seen from an offensive line. I'm serious. It was that bad. Mike Riley had guys at his feet constantly. The pocket was constantly collapsing. There was no time for him to step up and throw the football. No time for him to set his feet and find receivers down the field. They were just absolutely piss poor on the offensive line. And I don't know if that's going to get better overnight. And now you got to go on the road. You got to face this Saskatchewan team that, to be honest with you, defensively, they've struggled. They've not been the defense I thought they would be, but they've still got a good defensive front seven. And that's bad news anytime you see a good defensive front going up against this BC team. That's usually bad news for the Lions because their offensive line is so bad right now. It concerns me here in this game. Cody Fajardo finally had a subpar game for Saskatchewan in his last start, and in the last game for the Riders, they lost 37-10 on this field against Calgary. It is a better situation and spot for Saskatchewan because they're off the bye week. Extra time to prepare for BC, get some injured guys back. One of those being Manny Arsenault, the former BC Lion, who will make his Saskatchewan debut at wide receiver in this game. So, he'll be chomping at the bit, looking to have a big game against his former team. It's a really, really tricky one. I will say this about BC. If they get blown out here, I think it's time to write them off because Mike Riley, the quarterback, Devon Claybrooks, the head coach, they're talking the talk. We're embarrassed. We're professional athletes. We can't have a performance like we had last week, losing 33-6 at home to Edmonton. We have to be better than that. We have to be ready to do our jobs and start games on time and be ready to go from the opening kickoff. They're saying all the right things. They're pissed off. They're angry. They're motivated. They want to come out here and make amends and atone for that game. But you got to walk the walk as well as talking the talk. I don't even know if BC's good enough to make those words stand up in this game. That's how bad they've been. I'm going to have to see them put forth a good performance before I can believe it. So it's a really tough game. Toughest game of the week in terms of betting wise, for me at least, in the CFL. Saskatchewan open -2. It's up to -5. I don't want to lay 5 with Saskatchewan now either. Guess I would have to take BC, hold my nose, take them now at the current number, but just to lean and also lean under the total. I don't trust either offense. I think the defenses might show up here. It's a big game. Both of these teams need a win desperately. So maybe you get this game to stay under the total as a result.
Ian, good stuff, man. Nice breakdown of the games tonight. A lot of guys chiming in with different thoughts on the games. And Saskatchewan money line, not applicable-like, and take BC +5 from Blakely. -150, a high total in those conditions isn't a good idea, in my opinion, from Brandon Lugo, talking a little MLB there. Guys, we got best bets coming up. We'll talk for about 10 more minutes on the show. Let us know what you're betting and why. Feel free to market it however you would like in the chat box. Throw it out to the listeners. Ian Cameron on Twitter @Babano knows CFL betting as good as anybody out there. Also dabbles in the UFC. We got a UFC card on tonight's slate. Rafael Dos Santos is fighting. I'll tell you, Greg Hardy's in a fight. I feel like I got to bet that one, Ian. I just don't know which way. We got James Vick and Dan Hooker as well. That should be a good one. Ian, I haven't bet anything. I feel like, Greg Hardy, I don't know whether to bet on him or fade him. I got to bet the fight in some way, man. What are you betting on the UFC card tonight?
Yeah, it's an interesting. It's not a terrible card for a television event. Sometimes these television free cards on they're not used to. There used to be Fox and Fox Sports 1. They're ESPN Plus now, and ESPN they've got the rights now. This is a better one than normal. I definitely would lean Dos Anjos in the main event against Edwards at +110. James Vick, I believe, is fighting close to home, San Antonio, for his fight against Hooker. He's on a little bit of a skid. But you always got to look at a dog price with a guy fighting close to home. That's always something that interests me. So maybe James Vick worth a look. Yeah, Greg Hardy's probably a bet on or pass fighter for me. I know Juan Adams is very good himself. This should be an exciting fight. Both of those guys have knockout power. It's the reason why the total is 1.5 rounds in that fight, because there should be someone getting knocked the fuck out, as they like to say, in that fight. I would lean Hardy, but even money, it's tough. I respect Adams a lot too. The one dog that I'm kind of interested in is Sam Alvey. He's plus 150 against Klidson D. Abreu in that fight. Sam Alvey is always scrappy. It's been an up and down whirlwind for him. But I think you get him at a plus 150 price tag. I think he's going to compete, go out there. I think he knows, it's time to try to put a win on the ledger here. I think that could be your live dog of the night. So that's really what I'm looking at for the most part. Alfie's the one I like the most, probably plus 150. Hardy minus 110 a lean. Vic, probably I'll wait to see if that price gets better on him. Bet James Vic. And Dos Anjos, RDA in the main event. So those are the ones I'm looking at for the UFC card tonight.
Ian, a handicapping question for you in the UFC and what you know about it. Juan Adams versus Greg Hardy. Greg Hardy, what about minus 110 to minus 120 and a 1.5 total, like you said? They're going to come out and likely not going to be a long fight here. But we got Greg Hardy, the former NFL player. It's something I always look for in these like really athletic guys that can obviously fight. But when you get into the octagon and you face really trained fighters, finding that moment where, they hit the guy, they go against the guy that is just next level, jiu-jitsu and just, octagon fighting style. And it just, you see him just not be able to make that next step. At some point, I feel like that's going to happen to Greg Hardy. But at the same time, plus the fact that are we paying a tax here? We're having to pay up to bet on Greg Hardy just because of his name, in your opinion?
I do believe that to a certain degree, because he's an former NFL star with, played with Carolina, played at Dallas. In the NFL, people know him, name recognition, so to speak. I remember he fought in the Dana White Contender Series, which is that series they've done now for 2-3 years during the summer on Tuesday nights. And in his first Dana White Contender Series fight for the UFC, he was laying like minus 350 or 400 or some crazy outrageous price. So that tells you right away, that you are not really going to get a bargain in terms of pricing and the money line with Greg Hardy. It's just not going to happen. And I think it's carried over to every fight he's had in the UFC since then. So I think there is a product of that into this number where people know Greg Hardy. I think odds makers are going to anticipate. Public are going to want to bet Greg Hardy because of the name recognition, guy that played in the NFL for years. Although he was remembered after his NFL playing days for all the wrong reasons, what he did off the field. But definitely, I think odds makers realize, hey, we got to put a tax on his fights, because we think their money might come in on him from the public.
Yeah, and Matt here with the comment, Greg Hardy is finally fighting someone solid. Be careful. And that's what I'm speaking to, Matt. At some point he's going to go against somebody, because I believe he fought at the UFC Fort Lauderdale event, his last fight. I was there, and yeah, he pretty much smashed the guy he was going against. Brandon Lugo saying, I think Hardy gasses early. Big Juan right hands him. I actually don't know a lot about Big Juan, so that's why I'm
Juan's good. Well, Juan is really, really good. That's why I was surprised when this is even money. Like, I understand Hardy's got knockout, but Juan is not a guy to screw around with. He has got legitimate skills, legitimate power too. That is a fight that he could easily win for sure. And again, I mean, it's a situation too where experience-wise, he's still only a few fights into his career. Greg Hardy. So that's another thing. I know people are asking about Pacquiao and Keith Thurman. That's a tricky one. I think Thurman would be the way I'd look, to be honest with you. I mean, I know Pacquiao is a very crafty, like, I'm not a big boxing. I'm not going to pretend I'm the boxing expert. I'm not the freaking Al Bernstein of SBR here. But I'll tell you right now that,
very slick back. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah. But he's getting older now, Manny, a little bit, and he's laying minus 163. And Thurman's no joke. I do know enough about Keith Thurman that, as crafty as Manny Pacquiao, Pac-Man can be, Keith Thurman's going to give him, a good match here. The problem is, the boxing is so difficult, because you don't know what the judges are thinking or what they're going to do. We've seen some ridiculous, pathetic, embarrassing scorecards, and there's a damn good chance this is probably going to go to a decision like most of these big-time boxing matches do. And that always worries you when you got to tie up your money in a judge's scorecard in this sport. The UFC is not, the UFC has their odd controversial decision. It's always a scorecard in boxing that has you scratching your head saying, how the hell are you watching the same damn fight as me? How could you score the fight that way? You always get those in boxing, and that's always a worry for me when I bet this sport. But I think Thurman at a plus price if I had to bet it.
All right, looking Thurman in the boxing match, good UFC match as well. Yeah, we did hit the CFL, guys, about the 25-minute mark if you want to watch the replay, which should be loaded up about 5 minutes after we end the show, which we're going to be ending here shortly. Also talked MLB off the start. Ian, is there anything else you want to throw out to the watchers before we get to best bets, man?
No, that's it. We covered everything. We covered some baseball. We covered the CFL. We covered UFC. We even hit the boxing match. So I think we're good. I mean, in terms of baseball, I think the Blue Jays Tigers over makes some sense as well. 10.5. Trent Thornton for the Blue Jays, he's trending downward in a bad way. I mean, he's been absolutely lit up the last couple of starts, and I don't trust Daniel Norris either. And the Blue Jays lineup pelted this Tigers pitching staff last night in the first game of this series. So I could see that one being an over. I'm just quickly looking down the rest of this card. A Houston team total probably makes sense whenever I see this Ariel Hirado on the mound for the Texas Rangers. He's absolutely hideous, that guy. So Houston should be able to score some runs in that game. I already mentioned in terms of baseball, the Pirates team total over. I like that. I definitely like Arizona against Milwaukee, Arizona Diamondbacks, maybe an Arizona team total over as well in that game. You got Oakland, Minnesota, nothing on that one. I like Barrios at home. I like Oakland right now, the way they're hit. I would not bet against Oakland right now, but Barrios at home, I respect him, so I'm not going to take Oakland either. That's pretty much it. So, yeah, we can go to best bets. I'll say this. Best bet for me, my best bet's going to be CFL, but if I had to make one for baseball, it would be San Francisco. I just got to stick with what's working. The Giants have been phenomenal. It's probably the baseball game I like most today.
All right, Ian Cameron at Bavano on Twitter. Last week, I think we had a down 0-2 best bets. I know my play lost, so switch it up. I went last time.
No, actually, I did. No, mine came in. Montreal Ottawa was the over in the CFL game. So Montreal Ottawa.
All right, excuse me, Ian. Don't want to take that winner away from you, man. 1-1. All right. Yep. So you want to keep you going first or me go first?
No, you go first.
All right, man. The game we talked about, and shout out to Brandon Lugo and Tomar for helping me in the chat box. I'm pulling it up right now. We got Cincinnati with Luis Castillo on the hill. Just a guy I've done very well with. I think that he has a lot of success here against the Cardinals. Cincinnati Reds, by most numbers, their bullpen top 10 by some numbers. K to walk rate, very good for the Reds bullpen. So I think the later innings might be a success there for him as well. And just at the minus 129 price tag at Heritage, I think Cincinnati's the side. So I got one unit on Cincinnati by the end of the show. That will be my best bet. Cincinnati minus 129 at Heritage right now. Ian Cameron, right. What do you got, buddy?
Excellent stuff. Oh man, I'm debating going back and forth here. Side or total in this Edmonton-Montreal game. Let's do the total. Total worked last week. I like both of them. I like Edmonton minus 5.5, and I like Edmonton-Montreal over 53.5. The over is what cashed last week with the Montreal Alouettes. We'll see if we can again. This is an offense that I think is perking up. This is an offense that's pointing upward, playing better each week. Vernon Adams looks more and more comfortable each week as the quarterback, but I think Montreal's defense is still suspect, and Edmonton's offense playing as well as anybody. And there's not many quarterbacks playing as well right now in the Canadian Football League than Trevor Harris. I mean, outstanding start to the season for him. Like I said, completing 73% of his passes this deep into the season is remarkable. 8 touchdowns without an interception. Greg Ellingson, Ricky Collins, Kenny Stafford, good receiving core. Jay is stepping up too in the receiving core. Running back CJ Gable, very good offense right now, and I think Montreal is going to have their hands full today on the defensive side of the football. And it's been an over-series history between these two teams. It was 32-25 as well earlier this season when these two teams met in Edmonton. 32-25, 57 points in that game. I think we get something similar here to cash an over. So give me Edmonton, Montreal over 50. I think 53 is out there with Heritage. Yeah, 53 over minus 110 at Heritage. Let's use that as best bet number. 53 over the total. Edmonton, Montreal, best bet. Drew's turn to be muted now.
We each got to get one.
We all do it. Yeah, we each got to have one of those. Yes.
Yeah, but Heritage, the low water mark for both best bets here. Cincinnati minus 129 at Heritage, and the Montreal game over 53 at Heritage as well. So Ian Cameron on Twitter at Babano with the Montreal over. Guys in the chat, great stuff as always, man. Saturday mornings, 11 a.m. Great stuff here. Hardy was about to lose to Alan Crowder, fellas. I'm a little behind on the stream. Oh, I see it, Eric. Okay. No worries, man. Talking UFC. We already finished best bets, but it's all good. Blakely, Dom, Daryl Lyles in the house finally. Capper, John, Matt, Mad, greatest ever. All you guys, Ray Williams and company. Thanks for joining us.
One last thing. Matt Mad in the chat, who is talking UFC, he follows UFC a lot, so I'm sure he's going to give you good opinions in the chat with that. And Capper John's sending me tweets like 5 times a day. I don't know if this guy sleeps. Like, he's tweeting stuff at like 2 a.m, and I've already gone to sleep, and I check it in the morning. It's like, oh, Capper John sent me something on Twitter again. Oh my goodness! So Capper John's an animal. Capper John just, I think he's he has to have something, energy drinks, coffee, something to keep him going, because he's a nonstop force on Twitter, Capper John. But he's good. I mean, he's got great opinions. He's got good insight. He's a funny guy sometimes. So Capper John, salute to you.
Salute to you, Capper John. Also, the guys in the chat box talking about South Florida, Miami, coming up in a few weeks. So check it out if you haven't already. Hotels booked, everything like that. So check it out and watch Betting with the Bag for more information during the week, guys. For Ian Cameron, I am Drew Martin. Thanks for joining us. Best of luck with your bets today, and we'll see you next Saturday, 11 a.m. Thanks for tuning in.
Good luck, everybody. Thanks for watching.